We live in a time when the possibility of total nuclear war is no longer a hypothesis relegated to science fiction tales or Cold War paranoia. The winds of war are blowing stronger than ever, and the threat of nuclear conflict hangs like a sword of Damocles over the future of humanity. Who drops the atomic bomb first will make no difference, because the response of the others will be absolute and devastating, leading to mutual annihilation, known as MAD, mutual assured destruction. Attack strategies, counterforce and countervalue. In the nuclear war theater, two main strategies could be adopted by the superpowers: the counterforce strategy and the countervalue strategy. Counterforce. This strategy focuses on targeting the opponent's military infrastructure. In practice, the aim is to destroy military bases, missile silos, nuclear submarines, and all those targets that make up the enemy's offensive and defensive capacity. The goal is to weaken or eliminate the other's ability to respond effectively to a nuclear attack. Countervalue. In contrast to the counterforce strategy, the countervalue strategy is based on the direct attack on cities, industrial centers, and civilian infrastructure. In this scenario, the human losses and material damage would be incalculable, with millions of victims in a few minutes and entire nations reduced to ashes. War would turn into mass extermination, where the goal is to annihilate the enemy's will and capacity for resistance through the total destruction of his vital resources. The nuclear apocalypse and the MAD. If the world were to fall into a full-scale nuclear conflict, the MAD, mutual assured destruction, doctrine would inevitably be put into practice. Any nuclear-armed nation would be ready to respond to an attack with equal or greater force, setting off a chain reaction that could lead to the extinction of life as we know it. But the MAD would not stop at conventional nuclear weapons alone. Even more terrifying tools of destruction would also come into play, such as cobalt bombs, capable of amplifying radioactive fallout both in extension and duration. Or weapons such as the Russian nuclear torpedo Poseidon, a device designed to create radioactive tsunamis capable of wiping out entire coastal cities. The global implications and the risk of escalation. In such a scenario, the geopolitical consequences would be unpredictable and devastating. Nuclear powers such as China could seize the opportunity to invade Taiwan, while North Korea could attempt to conquer South Korea, further destabilizing East Asia. Japan would find itself squeezed between Russia, China, and North Korea, in a context that could force it to make dramatic decisions for its survival. India, with its unresolved tensions with Pakistan and China, could enter the conflict, bringing South Asia to the brink of catastrophe. The Middle East would also not be immune, with the possibility of an escalation between Israel and Arab nations, while Turkey, poised between NATO and Russia, could decide to pursue its imperial objectives, as a revival of Suleiman the Magnificent's dreams of conquest. The global effect: nuclear winter and return to the Stone Age. Although Africa and South America could avoid being directly involved in the conflict, they would not be immune to the devastating effects. Nuclear winter, a consequence of large-scale explosions, would darken the sky for months or years, leading to a drastic reduction in global temperatures, crop destruction, and an unprecedented famine. In this scenario, the distinction between belligerent and non-belligerent nations would become irrelevant. The catastrophe would affect everyone without discrimination. Albert Einstein once said, "I don't know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." His prediction of a return to the Stone Age, while impressive, may not be entirely accurate. More likely is that humanity will survive, but in a completely transformed and devastated world, where old social and political structures will have collapsed and new, more brutal ones will emerge from the ashes. A new dawn or a new beginning? Despite the apocalyptic picture painted so far, there may be a light at the end of the tunnel. Nuclear war, while not biblical Armageddon, could represent a turning point for humanity. A moment of restart, where the world will be forced to rebuild itself on new foundations. However, there is no guarantee that this new course will be better than the previous one. It could simply be different, shaped by the scars of a conflict that will have deeply marked humanity. Surviving the first post-nuclear war week. Essential Preparedness Guide. The prospect of a global nuclear war is a nightmare that no one would want to face, but in a world where the threat of nuclear conflict is increasingly real, it is crucial to be prepared. If catastrophe were to strike us, knowledge of the terrain and available resources could mean the difference between life and death in the first week after a nuclear attack. This week will be the most critical, a period in which survival will depend on a combination of preparation, adaptability, and the ability to work together. The importance of knowledge of the territory. In a post-apocalyptic scenario, familiarity with the surrounding territory will be crucial. Knowing where to find safe drinking water, safe shelters, and alternative food resources could save your life. Here are some key points to consider. Natural and man-made shelters. Identify areas that can offer shelter from radiation and weather. Caves, deep cellars, abandoned bunkers, or underground buildings can offer sufficient protection. The goal is to reduce radiation exposure in the days immediately following the explosion, when fallout levels will be higher. Sources of drinking water. Water networks will likely be contaminated or destroyed. Learn how to identify natural water sources such as rivers, lakes, or springs, and consider harvesting rainwater. Filtering and purifying water will be essential. For this, it is useful to know improvised filtering methods, such as using activated charcoal or boiling. Food and food resources. Food supplies will be scarce and will run out quickly. It identifies natural resources such as edible plants and wildlife, but also canned or dried food that might be found in abandoned stores or dwellings. It is essential to know how to store food and protect it from radiation, using materials such as lead or simply storing supplies in safe places away from the surface. Energy and heat management. The collapse of the electricity and methane gas distribution networks will lead us into darkness and cold. Surviving the nuclear winter without power will be a huge challenge, but not insurmountable with proper preparation. Lighting and heating. Without electricity, alternative lighting and heating sources will become essential. Candles, oil lanterns, and manual generators can provide light. For heating, fire remains the primary option, so having firewood, lighters, matches, and basic knowledge on how to start a fire in difficult conditions will be vital. Clothing and thermal insulation. Maintaining body heat will be crucial. Wearing multiple layers of clothing, using thermal blankets, and creating small, well-insulated areas inside homes can help conserve heat. Even if you're outdoors, take advantage of the vegetation or materials available to create shelters that protect you from the cold and wind. Alternative energy sources. Providing and storing batteries, hand crank generators, portable solar panels, and similar devices can be a good idea. Knowing how to reuse parts of machinery or vehicles to create emergency energy can also prove to be a valuable skill. The scarcity of food and drinking water. With the collapse of infrastructure, the supply of food and water will be one of the first emergencies. In the first days post-explosion, it might seem that resources are sufficient, but their management will be critical. Food rationing and storage. In a scenario where food becomes a finite resource, rationing will be essential. Plan meals sparingly, focusing on shelf-stable, high-calorie foods. Stocks of rice, beans, pasta, and canned food should be used with caution, extending their shelf life as much as possible. Water purification. With drinking water scarce, purifying every water source will become a necessity. In addition to filtering methods, consider using iodine or chlorine tablets to sterilize water, always remembering that boiling is the safest method if possible. Alternative foods. Familiarize yourself with unconventional food resources that may be available in your area. Wild plants, insects, and even some roots or bark can become vital resources. It is advisable to learn in advance which plant species are edible and which are toxic. Communication and collaboration. Surviving alone is almost impossible. Teaming up with other people can drastically increase your chances of survival. Here's how to manage communication and teamwork. Small community organization. Coming together with other survivors not only offers emotional support, but also increases available resources and shared skills. Forming small communities or survival groups will allow you to share tasks such as collecting water, preparing food, and building shelters. Short-range communication. With communication networks destroyed, shortwave or low-power radios, such as CB radios, will become valuable for communicating with other survivors nearby. Establishing a physical meeting point or specific times for communication can facilitate coordination. Resource distribution. Within a community, resource management will be critical. Creating a system for exchanging or sharing resources will help ensure that everyone has access to basic needs, avoiding internal conflicts and ensuring long-term survival. Mentality and psychological preparation. Finally, psychological preparation is just as important as physical preparation. The ability to remain calm, adapt to circumstances, and maintain hope will be crucial to survival. Stress management. Being able to manage stress in extreme conditions is vital. Breathing techniques, meditation, and visualization can help keep your mind clear. It is also important to recognize and deal with negative emotions such as fear and despair, rather than denying them. Continuing education. Before a catastrophe happens, make it a habit to learn new skills that could be useful in a survival setting. From learning first aid techniques, to building shelters, to learning about edible plants, every skill you acquire can increase your chances of survival. Hope and morale. Keeping morale high is crucial to getting through the most difficult times. Even in the darkest of times, finding something to strive for, whether it's family, friends, or simply survival itself, can provide the motivation you need to keep going. Surviving the first week after a nuclear war will require a combination of knowledge, preparation, and fortitude. No one can predict exactly how the situation will evolve, but being ready to face the unknown with a resilient mindset and a strong skill base will significantly increase your chances of making it. Countryside or city. How to survive a simulated nuclear attack with a Russian Topol MSS-25 Sickle missile. Tensions between Russia and the West have reached worrying levels, and with the conflict in Ukraine in full swing, the threat of a nuclear attack is no longer a remote possibility. In this scenario, we want to simulate the explosion of a Russian Topol MSS-25 Sickle 800 kiloton intercontinental ballistic missile, to provide guidance on how to attempt to survive in the first hours and days following such a catastrophic event. This simulation is not intended to be alarmist, but rather to offer practical information and advice for those who wish to prepare for the worst should the worst come true. Detonation and expected damage. The Topol MSS-25 Sickle missile is one of the most powerful weapons in the Russian arsenal, and its 800 kiloton nuclear warhead is designed to maximize damage. In our simulation, the detonation occurs at an altitude of 2,900 meters, strategically chosen to amplify the effect of destructive overpressure of 5 psi, pounds per square inch. To put this into perspective, an overpressure of 5 psi is enough to destroy concrete and steel buildings, cause serious damage to less resistant structures, and shatter glass at considerable distances. Urban areas, with their high density of construction, would suffer massive damage, while rural areas, depending on the proximity to the explosion, could also see large tracts of land devastated. Countryside or city. One of the main dilemmas in a nuclear attack context is whether it is safer to be in the city or in the countryside. Here are some factors to consider. In cities, urban areas are prime targets in the event of a nuclear attack, given their population density and strategic importance. The probability of being directly affected is high, as is the risk of being trapped in rubble, fires, and radiation. However, cities may offer safer shelters, such as deep dungeons, subways, or reinforced concrete structures, which could protect against initial radiation and fallout. In the countryside, rural areas are less likely as primary targets, which reduces the risk of being hit directly by the blast. However, a lack of infrastructure can make it difficult to access safe food, water, and shelter. Radioactive fallout could spread over large areas, contaminating the environment and natural resources, complicating long-term survival. Surviving a nuclear attack at night. What to do if you're in the city? Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, between 2:30 and 4:30 a.m., the darkest and quietest time of the day. But tonight will not be like the others. Let's say a Russian nuclear attack is about to hit your city. In just a few minutes, your life could change forever. What can you do in this short amount of time to increase your chances of survival? This guide is not just theoretical. It's a realistic scenario-based simulation designed to help you make quick, life-saving decisions. The nuclear attack, the worst night scenario. A nighttime nuclear attack is particularly devastating because it strikes when most people are asleep, unaware of the impending danger. This scenario is likely because it maximizes casualties and reduces the chance of an effective response. However, if the attack were to take place during the day, the reaction could be different, with a small margin of maneuver for those who are prepared. The role of electromagnetic bombs, E-bombs. Before an actual nuclear attack, Russia is likely to use electromagnetic bombs, E-bombs, to disable all electronic equipment within range. This type of attack would target critical electronic components, rendering mobile phones, computers, power grids, and even modern automobiles unusable. If you notice a sudden total blackout of communications and electricity, it could be a sign that a nuclear attack is imminent. These strikes would likely be carried out with ballistic missiles launched from SSBN submarines, creating an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, capable of covering a range of more than 1,000 kilometers. Your first reaction should be to understand that this is not a simple blackout, but something much more serious. The time window of survival: 5 minutes to act. If you are lucky and the E-bomb attack fails, you may receive an alarm via your mobile phone, the IT alert system, the IO app, or the classic alarm sirens. In that case, you will only have 5 minutes to act before a missile, such as the KH-47M2 Kinzhal or a Sarmat 28 rupees ICBM, hits your city. This reaction time is limited, considering that a Kinzhal can reach Rome in about 13 minutes from the Kaliningrad region, and a Sarmat in about 18 minutes. What to do immediately? Crucial steps for survival. Communications monitoring. Pay attention to the field situation of your cell phone and the transmission of radios. If you notice a total outage, consider an imminent EMP attack. Identify a safe haven. If you receive an alarm, you need to move quickly. Look for the nearest and safest shelter. In the city, the best places of refuge are basements, underground parking lots, or reinforced concrete structures. These places offer superior protection against both shockwave and initial radiation. Reach the refuge. You have very little time. If you're at home or in a building, head to the basement or underground parking lot immediately. If possible, take a bottle of water, a warm jacket, a scarf, or an FFP2 mask with you. These items could be vital in protecting you from radiation and dust after the explosion. Find a safe zone in the shelter. Once in the shelter, try to position yourself near the fire filters, which are usually protected by EI 120 doors. These doors, often colored blue, cream, or gray, offer extra protection. Make sure they are tightly closed after your pass. Protect yourself from cold and radiation. Sit on the ground, away from doors, and use your jacket to cover yourself. The FFP2 scarf or mask will help you filter the air from radioactive particles that could infiltrate the shelter. And if there is no alarm? If you don't receive any alarms, but suspect an attack is imminent due to a total blackout, take immediate action. Time is crucial, and your readiness can mean the difference between life and death. Being ready means surviving. The chance of surviving a nuclear attack depends largely on your readiness and speed of reaction. A night attack is designed to take everyone by surprise, but knowing the signs and knowing how to react can save your life. Prepare yourself mentally and physically. Keep an emergency kit ready at all times, and remember, even in a situation of total chaos, acting quickly and rationally can make all the difference. Surviving a nuclear attack outside the city. A practical guide in different scenarios. Being out of town during a nuclear attack opens up a number of possibilities, each with its own challenges and dangers. Whether you're at home, in a car, on public transport, or even on a plane, it's essential to know what to do to increase your chances of survival. Basic rules for survival. Before exploring the various scenarios, there are a few basic rules to keep in mind. Don't watch the explosion. As fascinating as it sounds, watching a nuclear bomb explode can cause blindness, whether temporary or permanent. At night, the risk is even greater, as the distance from which the flash can damage your vision increases significantly. Your eyesight will be a valuable asset in the moments after the explosion, so protect it at all costs. Prepare for the shock wave. The shockwave travels at sonic speeds and will reach your location within a few seconds of the explosion. For example, if the bomb explodes 15 kilometers away, the shockwave will arrive in about 43 seconds. Use this time to find cover and minimize damage. Scenario 1. You are at home. If you are at home during a nuclear attack, you have the advantage of knowing your surroundings well. Here's what to do. Open the windows. Opening the windows may seem counterintuitive, but this helps prevent the shockwave from destroying them, hurling shards of glass inside the house. Seek shelter behind a wall. Find a wall that is as far away from windows as possible and position yourself behind it. This will protect you from both shockwave and broken glass. Don't look at the flash. As mentioned above, avoid watching the explosion. Close your eyes or cover them with your hands and wait for the shockwave to pass by. Scenario 2. You are in a facility that is not your home. The same rules that apply to your home apply if you're in another property. Open windows. If possible, open the windows of the room you are in. Move away from the windows. Find a protected wall or corner and take cover, avoiding direct exposure to the shockwave. Don't look at the flash. Resist the temptation to look at the source of the explosion. Scenario 3. You are in a car or on public transport. If you are traveling by car or public transport, the situation changes radically. Stop and stop the engine. Immediately stop in a safe area and turn off the engine. If the attack is preceded by an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, it is likely that the motor has already shut down on its own. Don't look at the mushroom cloud. Even if you're tempted to look at the mushroom cloud or take a picture, resist. Your priority should be immediate protection. Protect yourself in the car. If you can't leave the vehicle, try to protect yourself as much as possible inside. Sit as far away from the windows as possible. Scenario 4. You are on a train. Being on a train during a nuclear attack is a very dangerous situation. The train will stop. Since the electricity will go out almost immediately, the train will stop. Prepare for a stalemate. Stay in the wagon. If you are not near a station or there is no safe haven nearby, it is best to stay inside the wagon. Find a protected corner away from windows and be prepared for the shockwave. Scenario 5. You are on a plane. Being in an airplane during a nuclear attack is the worst possible scenario. Loss of onboard electronics. It is very likely that the flight electronics will be compromised, making it impossible to control the aircraft. Absence of airports. Even if the electronics are working, many airports may have been destroyed or rendered inoperable by the attack. Possible precipitation. Lack of communication and damage to the aircraft could lead to a free fall. Be prepared for an emergency landing, even if the chances of success are extremely low. Scenario 6. You are walking or cycling. Finally, if you are outdoors on foot or by bicycle, Find immediate cover. Immediately seek cover, such as a ditch, trench, or the inside of a building. Even a small shelter can offer protection against the shock wave. Lie on the ground. If there is no shelter available, lie on the ground, preferably with your feet facing the explosion, and cover your head with your hands. This can reduce the damage caused by the shock wave and flying debris. Preparation and readiness are essential. In such a dramatic and unpredictable context, preparedness and readiness are essential to survive. Every second counts, and your ability to act quickly can mean the difference between life and death. Learn these rules, memorize them, and share them with those close to you. In the hope that they will never have to be put into practice, it is better to be prepared than to be helpless in the face of a catastrophe.